Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for our second Future Tritons Parent and Family Insights webinar. In today's session, our goal is to provide you with helpful information to support your student as they consider applying to UC San Diego. We'll address some common concerns, provide helpful tips and insights, and most importantly, we will have a guest speaker in this webinar that will highlight a lot of housing and dining information. This information is designed for both first-year and transfer applicants. Before we begin, here are a few housekeeping notes. This 60-minute webinar is designed to be an informative session to help you better understand UC San Diego and your students' next steps. We will not be taking live questions during the presentation. However, we encourage you to engage with the content and take notes. Today's webinar is being recorded. A copy of the recording will be available in about 2 weeks on our undergraduate admission events recording page. So you'll be able to revisit the information at your own pace. Most importantly, this webinar will not impact your student's application process in any way. It is simply an opportunity to learn more about UC San Diego and what the future may hold for your student. Additionally, closed captioning is available. To enable it, click the live transcript icon in your Zoom toolbar and select Show Captions for automated captions. Before we get the show started, I'd like to share a few quick highlights. Our undergraduate admission events team has put together a diverse lineup of weekly webinars designed for parents, counselors, and prospective students. We encourage you to visit the undergraduate admissions events page located under the Visit section of our website. This upcoming month, we'll be hosting spotlight webinars featuring academic schools and departments, along with Friday in-person events in the month of October and November. This is a great opportunity to explore campus if you're in the area. Be sure to bookmark our events page and register early as spots often fill up quickly. If you have not yet subscribed to our newsletter, this is an amazing way to stay on top of the upcoming events and to receive monthly reminders. So we encourage you to also join our mailing list found in the resources section under the mailing list tab. If you're joining us late or missed any of our earlier September parent webinars, or if you'd like to watch student-focused sessions, you can visit our event recordings page on the undergraduate admissions website under resources. Recordings are typically posted about 2 weeks after each event, so be sure to check the page regularly to stay up to date. If you need assistance or clarification regarding your student, we encourage you to contact us via the Contact Us form on the undergraduate admissions website. Please note that we are able to address general information to provide to you as a parent. For student-specific circumstances, the student needs to email us directly in order for us to release student-related information according to UC policy. So we do appreciate your understanding and cooperation with this. You can also visit our frequently asked section, which addresses many common questions and concerns that you may have and we may already have an answer to. So your first points of contact should be our frequently asked section, which you can access here on our Contact Us form. And with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce our MC for this special webinar, Jim Rollins. Jim Rollins holds the position of Associate Vice Chancellor, also known as AVC, of Enrollment Management at UC San Diego. Jim, I'll hand it off to you.
Griselda, thank you so much, and everyone, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And just to really emphasize related to several things that Griselda just shared with everyone, this is a webinar series specifically devoted to family and parents of our potential applicants. Now, we know good and well some of you on here may be applicants, and that's okay. But we'll very much be thinking about that kind of relationship part of this when we're giving an audience to a different group today and with this whole series of webinars. Whether you're a mom, a dad, a grandparent, an uncle, a friend, a guardian, any of those things, we know that any student that's looking at the idea of going to college has a whole posse of people in their corner rooting for them. And we're glad that you're showing up today means you want to play some part of being informed and helping support that process. So anyway, welcome as always. Some of you may have come to our September program, and this is our first where we'll have special guests for several things, and I'm so glad for the first guest we have. So we have with us today my colleague Himlata Jhaveri, and Himlata is in a different part of campus than we are, but in her role as Senior Associate Vice Chancellor of Residential, Retail, and Supply Chain Services. That is a mouthful and a long acronym, Himlata. I'll bet you have a word for it. We are so happy to get to work with her and her team, especially on the housing and dining front, as it relates to this. And so because we have a lot of exciting things going on with this today, we knew that Dr. Jhaveri would be a really, really terrific speaker for you all to hear from as our special guest. So Himlata, first and foremost, welcome and thank you for doing this with us. And we have a few questions we'll be asking you to get going today, but mainly let's give you a chance to introduce yourself a little further. And I hope I did you justice to get started.
No, absolutely, Jim. You did great. Again, thank you for having me on the webinar. Housing tends to be such a critical topic, and really, I've spent over 30 years in housing. So when we say residential, retail, and supply chain, it includes housing and dining as a major portion. And I think that's the best part of my job. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation this afternoon.
That's really great. Well, and I don't know how many of our attendees have been on campus yet, but those of you that haven't, I guarantee you as you start to get ready to visit or you see some of the pictures that Himlata will share with you today, you'll see some of the things that we're so proud about here. And the idea of living on campus is absolutely a part of how your students will think through how they choose whether or not UC San Diego is a place they see themselves. We humbly suggest we've got a lot of great things for them to see themselves being a part of. So Himlata, why don't we get started here? And I know you've got some slides to share with us as well. So let's start with the obvious question. What can you tell us more about the housing program at UC San Diego?
Absolutely. I think that's a great start. So, uh, if you have been on campus, there were a lot of cranes. A lot of cranes have come down because we have been aggressively building housing and opening developments every single year. So, what you see on the screen is Ridgewalk North Living and Learning Neighborhood. This just opened this fall of 2025. We opened 2,400 beds in this neighborhood. It's also the new home for Marshall College, if some of your students may be thinking about it. Of course, housing that faces westerly, we have ocean views. We are very close to the Pacific Ocean, and over 50% of our rooms will have ocean views. But I would say what's even more important is that we have made sure that the common spaces that are either on the top of the building or face the ocean, they tend to be common spaces. So everybody who lives in that community will have ocean views. With the opening of Ridgewalk North, we are the second largest residential campus in the country. And very soon, not too far in the distance, we probably will become number one. Our chancellor is very committed to investing in the housing growth because he understands that when you live on campus, students do better in terms of GPA, also have stronger connections to the peers, will make lifelong friends because when you are in a double or triple, you have instant friends and they will be your friends for life. A couple of other projects that I'll highlight if you go to our next slide. There we go, Pepper Canyon West. You see those beautiful towers, and you see the light rail, the red train running through our campus. With the opening of the light rail, it has truly opened our campus to the rest of San Diego. So Pepper Canyon West, which opened in 2024, is home to our transfer students, 1,300 beds. And what we heard from our transfer students, that what was really important for them was to have their own bedroom. So all 1,300 beds are singles. So students have their own personal space when they live in this community. Now, having said that, when we opened Pepper Canyon West, it filled up completely. So, of course, we know there is more demand than what we have today. So, the next project that we will continue to work on will be building more single occupancy bedrooms for our upper division and transfer students. Because, again, it was extremely popular. You see some of the images of the study space, the lounge room, very dynamic, tall glass windows. It's very bright all year round. And again, our students love living in Pepper Canyon West. It is our first 12-month student housing for undergraduate students. But again, a lot of demand, and we are completely full in Pepper Canyon West. So for undergraduate students, we have a little over 19,000 beds. And then for our graduate students, a little over 5,000. And we have about 600 apartments for our faculty and staff as well. So we're sitting at right about 24,380 beds on campus. And again, just growing because again, it's a great investment. Our students want to live on campus, and there's no reason not to.
That's so great. Hemlata, I'm just loving these pictures as we go through them too, but I guess I should stay on track here. You've already kind of hinted at some of this when you talk about why the chancellor values this growth so much. But can you talk more with us about what are some of those benefits of a student living on campus?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Of course, when students live on campus, the picture you're seeing is Theater District Living and Learning Neighborhood, also with those ocean views at Theater District.
Wow.
We opened this project in 23 and 24. Most of the projects also have classrooms that are designed with it. So as you can imagine, if you have an 8 a.m. class, it's very easy to wake up at 7:30, brush, grab a quick meal from your dining area and head to your class. There's just such great convenience about the proximity of being on campus. There is no commute. You don't have to worry about parking. And some of the other amenities is the room and board prices that you have on our website. It's all inclusive. There is no additional charge for anything else. All the utilities are included. The units come fully furnished. So you really don't need to bring a lot of furniture. Although I will say students get very creative. I have seen some lofted beds with big screen TVs and sofas tucked right under the bed. So again, our students get extremely creative, but all the furnishings are included. Our rooms also have high-speed internet that is so critical for our students today, and also streaming TV. So again, of course, if they have their Netflix account from home, you can still use it. But again, on campus, you have truly robust offerings of streaming TVs. A lot of lounge space where students can truly just hang out inside their building or outside their building. If there is one thing the pandemic has taught us is the importance of leaving your residential room, going out into the open space where you can hang out in small groupings or attend large programs. So again, each of the districts have been designed very thoughtfully to make sure students have a great living, learning experience. I will say the play is just as important. So for us, it's important that while students live with us, we have what is called an RA or a resident assistant that lives on the floor with the students, and they will make sure, especially in the first few weeks, building those bonds and friendships are so critical to make sure that students are truly getting out of the room, coming out to programs where they get to know their neighbors and really others in the building. So you're building, again, those lifelong friendships. I cannot emphasize that enough as to how important that is in your first few weeks and your first year of living on campus. So again, you build those together. There is staff that help you do that. In the event a student doesn't have answers to some questions, an RA can also help look it up or let them know which office may be able to assist them. So a lot of hands-on for our first-year students as they transition to campus, but also keeping in mind that our transfer students have different needs, and our RAs are trained to make sure that the transfer students are just as connected on campus.
That's so great. And remind me, Hemlata, we've now got what we call a 2-year guarantee for both first year and transfer students to be able to stay on campus the first 2 years, regardless of whether they came here straight out of high school or transferring from another college, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I would say that is really important to know that as students arrive on campus, you have a 2-year housing guarantee. I will emphasize that it's really, really important to apply by the deadline because whatever spaces our incoming students or transfer students don't take it, we will offer it to our third and fourth year students who want to stay on campus even after their first 2 years. So highly recommend, please apply by deadline so we can get you into our beautiful housing communities.
Let's call this our dramatic foreshadowing. And if we had a sound clip we could make Griselda play, we'd have her play it now. Folks, Hemlata talked about a deadline, and you'll hear me talk about that a few other things throughout this year. There are a few key moments where you really can help us by reminding your student that these deadlines are a real thing. And we try to make some things last as long as they can, but after that's done, with Hemlata's example, we got to kind of move on to other students we want to help because we figure if a student doesn't turn their stuff in, that they may be one of the ones that don't need it. Hemlata, by the way, I didn't plan on this with you ahead of time, but just as a general rule, do we ever say for our first year students that housing is required or just that we strongly recommend it? Because I know a lot of universities will get into the exact wording of that.
Right, so we don't require, we highly recommend it. Just given the benefits, we know there is so much research that has been done that really shows the cause and effect of living on campus to being more engaged with the campus community. Because as you can imagine, if a student is not living on campus, a lot of activities happen in the evening. So
Yeah.
if you are living off campus, the chances of a student coming back to campus is very slim. So we highly recommend that staying on campus is a great plus. So you're fully engaged, making those friends beyond the friends you may already know, right? So, I mean, you have the opportunity to have a global community of friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, everyone, if you are starting to learn this about going to university level study, um, University of California, San Diego has almost 95% of our new freshmen from last year back to start their sophomore year this year. And that is an almost unheard of number as you look at other institutions around the US. And we're still working on that other 5%. We'd love to make it perfect. But there's a lot of reasons that that tiny number of students does perhaps move on sometimes. But I think our housing that you're hearing about today, everyone, the college system, which we're going to have you hear about at one of our future webinars, those are both really good reasons that we've got such a good opportunity for students to build on this community that Hemlata is talking about. Now, as much as this is about all the great amenities and all the things, Hemlata, let's get real. For a lot of these students, I know our parents and families are knowing that what they really want to know is about the dining options.
Sure.
So maybe that can be our last thing we spend a little bit of time on with you. Tell us a little bit about the dining arrangements here and what makes them so great.
Sure, absolutely. Happy to share about our truly award-winning dining program that we have on campus. We have chefs on campus. They are certified, trained. They go into cooking competitions and come out winning awards. So that is what the students are eating on campus. It is not your traditional dining. We have what is called a declining balance. So the amount that a student has on their ID card, everything's on their ID card. It's like a debit card. They never lose any money. If you get a bagel and a coffee, that's all you pay for. If you can choose to have a heavier lunch, dinner, it's a student's choice. So that's the beauty of the dining plan is that students have full control. I'll just highlight a few things about our dining program. Our number one seller on campus is sushi. And the reason is we hand roll our sushi on campus every single day. Students never get tired of eating sushi on campus, including our faculty and staff. We also know students have dietary needs. So we have the largest a halal certified dining program on campus. We also offer certified kosher, a wide range of vegetarian, vegan options. We also opened a couple of years ago an African diaspora menu palette, which is truly amazing, and also a South Asian platform at Cafe Ventanas. Um, on top of that, we have two dietitians on our team. So if we needed to craft a menu that was very specific because of allergens or other reasons, our dietitians are able to truly individualize the plan if needed. Again, like I said, you have to try it to really know why our students love eating on campus. I should also highlight that with our dining plan, they also get what is called Triton Cash. With that Triton Cash, there are 60 vendors other than our 15 housing venues where students can spend their Triton Cash, including at the bookstore, but also some of the eateries off campus. So again, students enjoy that flexibility of using their dollars on campus, off campus, and they can also call in food from outside. So our students have a lot of flexibility, which they truly enjoy. And we work with our students very closely. That if there is something that is missing, that we don't have it, we're happy to bring it to them.
That's really great. And I got to confess, I'm one of many staff members who loves all these food options you all made available to the students. So I'm very grateful that we can sneak in there to most of those places. Oh, great stuff. Hemlana, do you have you're probably not allowed to say this because all your chefs will get upset. Do you have a favorite place you like to go for lunch?
So I will say, so I do like all our menus. Of course, if I picked one, you're right, our chefs would be not so happy. However, I will say Cafe Ventanas has amazing empanadas on campus. It's the only place we have empanadas. Highly recommended.
And this is which place again that has the empanadas?
Cafe Ventanas
Is that
at
the one we
ERC.
just saw the picture of a few minutes ago? I think it was the one with the really high roof over there, the one that got renovated.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that looks really nice. There you go.
yes.
So that would be a good reason to live in Seventh College, although that's not how we want people to pick a college. Or no, Seventh is right
No,
up there,
not at
and
all.
Roosevelt. It's right in
I
between
should,
those. Yeah. So,
yes, and maybe Jim, I should add, right, the students can use their plan anywhere on
yeah.
campus. It is not restricted to where they live at their college, because of course students travel throughout the day for classes and other reasons to the gym. So whatever is closest is accessible to them. I should also highlight that with the opening of Ridgewalk, we opened our fifth Amazon Just Walk Out Market. So as you can, I mean, again, students are used to it, right? When at the airport, you can do a self-checkout. Our entire market is a self-checkout.
Yeah.
Students swipe their card when they come in, they can take whatever they want. There is no checkout there. Our students love
Oh, all of this is so great, Himlana. I'm afraid the internet demons are telling us because you froze for a second there that maybe we should let you get back to your afternoon at some point here. But it's been terrific to have you with us as a guest. Thank you so much for telling the great story of all this part of what it means to physically become part of our community and live on campus and eat on campus and all those things. We'll know that a lot of these families on here, their students are going to be applying, and I know they've got a lot to look forward to because of what you're sharing to them. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jim. And
You
again,
bet.
thank you for
Take care.
having me.
All right, everyone. And for the rest of our time today, we're just going to do as we do each month. We're going to have a chance to answer some of the questions you all might have asked when you registered. As Griselda mentioned, we don't try to do a live Q&A at these because the attendance is high enough. We would never come close to being able to make you feel like we're answering things as they pop up in here. I want to, by the way, make sure you all note that at times where Hemlana was sharing interesting information, Griselda has always been terrific about dropping links and commentary into the chat where you can see that and follow up. So she's giving you all more general information about undergraduate housing or the dining options, reminding you about where you can go for recordings of this afterwards or the monthly newsletter that we have. So Griselda, thanks for all of that you're doing. So here's a few things from me, and I've got, again, questions or ideas that several of you all raised when you registered for this event. We always appreciate that. There's a few things that are on your minds that I think Himlata ended up addressing today. A lot of you have questions just wanting to know a variety of things about how the admissions process itself works. And that's probably what I'll spend a good bit of time on today. Several of you all asked questions about the college system. And I'll touch on that a little bit today, but I also want to let you know, as I mentioned while Himlata was joining us, I do plan for us to have somebody from the leadership of our college system join us at one of our upcoming webinars. And so I'd hate to steal their thunder because they do such a better job of this. But I will just say for now, that is a really terrific part that some of you even ask us what makes you the same as or different from other UC campuses. I'd say our college system here not only makes us unusual among the University of California campuses, but among all institutions in the United States. And I honestly, for the life of me, can't figure out why more large institutions don't do this. But I'm so glad that we do, and I think you'll find it's a huge benefit for your students. So a quick overview I'll give you all of the college system right now, and then again, I promise we'll come back to it in more depth in an upcoming webinar, is that the college system, and there's 8 of those colleges, which Griselda just gave you all the link for. Those colleges, for one thing, in a functional sense, give us a way to make sure your students get a small within a big experience. There's a few other ways universities can do this. But what we really love about the college system here, which is built on concepts that go all the way back hundreds of years to the way in the UK, places like Oxford and Cambridge universities do this, is it's the notion that even within a large place that does everything, there's a benefit to having smaller communities within. And the way we do the colleges here make it such that if you've got a student who's looking to come to us as a first-year college student coming out of high school, they'll pretty much always be assigned to housing that is within their college. And so our colleges on campus are a physical part of campus, like little neighborhoods around campus. They're each led by a provost. They have a dean of student life, a dean of advising. So these students feel like they've got a lot of what they need in a smaller scale sense. So while they will indeed be a part of a class of over 7,000 freshmen, first-year students, if they come here next fall, you can also let them know that they'll be part of a group of less than 1,000 students in their college. And again, especially for our first-year students, that means where they live as well. There's a tiny number of students because of a special thing they want to do. They might live somewhere other than their college. But it really becomes a defining part of not only how they approach things to have a smaller community, but again, kind of like Himlata said with being able to eat anywhere on campus. Your students, when they join one of these 8 colleges, they can still be completely connected to people in all 7 other colleges around campus for their social lives, for their gatherings, for their clubs, for all that stuff. But this just gives us an additional dimension for doing this. That again, I don't know why more schools don't do it, but we're so proud that we do. There's some really glorious stuff. And again, as she mentioned, ocean views aren't bad either. These are probably some of the best views in La Jolla for the lowest price, that's for sure. But one other thing that's very important about colleges, and then we're going to move on to some of our other questions for today. I'll make sure that when we have the leader of one of the colleges or a provost join us next time, I'll have them talk in more detail about the fact that when your student joins a college as a transfer or a first-year student, it will mean for some slight differences in what we call our general education or gen ed requirements. So regardless of what your student is majoring in, they can choose to and be placed into any number of these colleges. They will rank order them when they apply, in fact. But when we put them in that college, it will have some slight impacts on how they approach their gen eds. So it'll have to do with things like themes about what's important. And if you're following Griselda's links, you can read some of this. But those themes about what they focus on or what their students are most passionate about, that may even translate into some of the things they do in their freshman writing classes. Transfer students, again, it may not be exactly the same because of what you will have already done before you come here. But either way, that becomes an academic part, a curriculum part of what it means to be in a certain college. So keep looking into that. And as we start to turn our attention towards the admissions advising part of this afternoon, let me throw this out. Your students need to fill out their applications, transfer or first year, by the end of next month. I think we're calling it officially December 1st this year because of the days of the week those fall on. But when your students apply, they will need to list a first choice major unless they're undeclared. They will need to list a alternate choice major if they want to have a backup plan if we can't give them the top major they want. And if they're a transfer student, we actually won't give them the option of applying undeclared. And that mainly has to do with the fact that us being so in demand, we only make transfer spaces available to students who are ready to come directly into a major and go ahead and move efficiently through our system to make room for the next student. But our first year students, I want to emphasize, it's okay for them to not have a major. A lot of our applicants do go ahead and request one, but I just want to really emphasize there's no downside to being undeclared. We think that's a wonderful way to approach things, and even students who apply with a major requested will often decide to change their major multiple times, and that makes them just like students at universities all over the United States. So that's perfectly good stuff. Also, by the time they apply at the end of November, beginning of December, they will have needed to have again ranked their top 4 college choices. Or this year, for the first time, we're giving them the option of checking a box that says, I have no preference at this time. But once they apply, our communications team will be reaching out to them with things like emails that we send. We have a web portal that applicants log into. We will be reminding them that it can be a really good thing to choose a major. It can be a really good thing to rank the colleges, because we want students to understand that not every opportunity will continue to be available once the student comes here. So we will give students actually a chance to go into their portal, is how we say it, all the way through not only December, but all of January, and update their answers to the questions about major and college rankings. The college ranking, by the way, has nothing whatsoever to do with their chances of admission. The major will sometimes have something to do with their chances of admission. So a few of you all have asked about this in our questions that were submitted for this. So just to explain this, if your student is a first-year applicant coming out of high school, there are definitely some majors that are much more competitive to get into than others. We'll call those selective majors on our application, and we'll try to use an asterisk or some other kind of symbol to always note that those are the ones that students most need to be aware of. And when a student applies requesting one of those selective majors, what we're trying to signal to them is that even once we see that this is a really strong student overall, we only have so many spots for the students compared to how many students want one of those spots. And so sometimes those students will possibly be put in an alternate major instead. Sometimes they will be told, we can't give you either major you want. And in a much smaller number of cases, I think in the interest of transparency, and I talked about this at our webinar last month as well, we do like to help them understand that sometimes their chances of getting admitted to UCSD overall might be a little lower because of the major that they've picked. This is not true of most majors. Most of the majors it is referring to, and Griselda has again helpfully put the link in here, you'll see that a lot of them are in areas like engineering or other related disciplines. And even then, a good few of those students who apply wanting those majors, if they are very, very strong, we might very well try to still give that student a chance to come here, but they won't get that major they were after. Also, in the interest of transparency, that very short list of majors includes some that it's definitely not easy to simply switch into once you get here. So we don't want a student thinking, oh, I'll pick one of the majors that no one wants and I'll get in, and then I'll switch to computer science. That's one of the really hard ones to get into. Only to find out that we don't let students just show up one morning on a Tuesday and switch into computer science. So do help them understand that. And again, as important as what I'm telling you all right now is the fact that the vast majority of our majors on this campus don't work that way. The vast majority of our campus majors that your students can pick can be switched into and out of very easily. And we want it to be that way, especially when a student's got a whole 4-year curriculum ahead of them. And your major often doesn't even make up half of the classes you'll take while you're here. We want students to be able to explore, to experiment and move things around, but only for so long, because we know you want them to get out at a certain amount of time too. We know what you're thinking about as well. So keep that balance in mind. And again, those of you who have a transfer student in your house, just remember the big difference in there is that with transfers, we can't go with undeclared. And with them, we do have the additional very important factor of what we call major prep or major preparatory requirements. And so related to all these links, Griselda's being so great to put in here for you all, those of you working with a transfer student might help them notice that there's a very particular list of classes where we say, not only do you need to have taken certain classes at your community college to be ready to come here, but if you want to major in major X, you need these 4 classes with at least this grade in all of them, or we won't be able to do anything for you. So help your students know that major prep is a very important thing when we mention it for transfer students. I will say we're actually disappointed each year when we have students who apply as transfers who don't meet the major prep requirements, because it's almost like we could have told them we saw it coming. And we hate for them to not realize this list, The kind of student who does realize this is the kind whose parents and families are showing up to this webinar today. So I'll bet this is no problem for most of you. But just you can really help us when you're talking with other families for that matter. If your student's applying as a transfer, that major prep list is going to be really, really important. So they should look into that as soon as they can. All right, we've got a few more minutes left to do a lot more things. I'm just going to look through some of the other great questions we've gotten. Again, many of you submitted one, and I just love some of these things. Some of these questions get very particular, and you'll forgive us if we don't try to answer some of them online. But some of the questions we've got here, we've got things like, I'm interested in both marine biology and business, or how do I be a double major, or what about this and that? We absolutely have students pursuing more than one thing they love here. Some students, again, will actually switch majors, but it is possible sometimes to do more than one thing. That's what minors are for as well. We have minors available in a lot of these programs. So I'm not going to get into all the particulars of what was this one, marine biology and business. I'm not going to try to go down that particular rabbit hole today, but I will say there's a lot of combinations that could be possible here. And the advisors that work with your students can often help them figure out what is the best mix and match of how they can do that. It's very true, not just here, but at every college on the planet, that students will sometimes kind of back their way into a minor and realize after they've been here a little while, oh my gosh, I just love this subject area and I've taken these 3 classes. And my advisor now tells me if I just take 2 more, I can get a minor in this. So it doesn't always have to be planned out ahead of time. In fact, it often isn't. But we certainly want students to be able to see how that can kind of come together in a certain way. A lot of questions in here about just wanting to talk more about how we admit students in the first place. Talk about a fundamental key question. So let's talk about that a little bit more. When your students apply to us by the end of next month, there are a lot of things we do around admissions that we refer to as holistic. And some of you who went to college yourselves recently, or you've had another student go off to college already, you may have heard this term and gotten quite familiar with it. I don't know about you all, but when I first heard this term, when I heard holistic admissions, it sounded like, I don't know, we were waving a new age crystal over their application or something like that. It's not that. But on the other hand, I can tell you what, in all very seriousness, what we really value in the way we and the other UCs approach admissions is that we don't want it to be formulaic. We don't want to say there's a certain GPA that guarantees somebody will get in or that they won't get in, because we know there's so many details to what your students have been doing. There's so much context. Where are they? How's the grading at their high school? How do they compare to other students who are trying to come here? And we want to really get a full picture of that. We ask students to not only provide us with a record of their academics, like telling us all the grades they've taken, they've earned in the classes they've taken, but we also ask them to write some personal things, what we call personal insight questions or PIQs. We don't even completely define what they have to write about. We give them 8 options and they pick 4 of them, so that our students coming out of high school can even choose what things they're telling us more about. And we encourage them to realize there's no best 4, there's no this is more important than that. It's a chance for them to say whatever speaks to them and then make sure they speak to us about that. We look at what your students have done for things like activities, accomplishments, jobs they might have held, any number of things that kind of give us dimensional understanding of what they're doing when they're not in the classroom. And if I can offer you all any personal advice I have from having worked in college admissions for over 3 decades, is I'll tell you the last thing you should be in telling your student they need to do is you should never tell them that they need to do more activities to have a better chance of admission. If anything, that sometimes backfires, because what we really want to see is when your student decided to devote their attention to something, what does it show us about who they are beyond their classes and their grades? And the more activities they're involved with, guess what? It turns out the less engaged they can be in any of those activities. It's just kind of a point of diminishing returns, I think is the old phrase for that. I would much rather see a student who has a relatively short list of activities. And again, some of them may be different kinds of things too, where they tell us, this is a job I held because I needed to hold a job and contribute to the needs of my family. This is what it taught me about responsibility or organizing or how I balanced it with class. Other students can tell us about some leadership position and what they brought to it or what they got from it. But if nothing else, again, coming back to this notion that less may be more, encourage your students to, again, get away from thinking they need to list all the things they can. Whether it's with us or schools that use the Common App or any number of other universities out there, I think one of the most overlooked places for students to think about when they apply is the little bitty boxes where we don't just say, list the activity and tell us what grade you're involved, but we give the student a chance to say a little bit about it. And if the student simply tells us stuff that we already knew in there, they're really missing an opportunity. And so just encourage your students to really make the most of that. And again, this is especially on the first year or freshman side. I'm talking about this with them now. That kind of information, the PIQs, they're going to be so richly helpful for us to kind of just see what students bring to us besides, hey, they're a good student, they take classes. Because we really want to bring, again, think about the community that Hemlata described earlier today. We're bringing in a group of people that are occupying this community together, and we want them to be different from one another. We don't want there to be one kind of student that we value most. If anything, we think it's one of the really wonderful things about their time in college is that they're going to be around students who aren't like them, who don't have the same interests, who don't have the same strength. And we know that they're going to learn from each other just as much as they learn from us. So hopefully that's helpful. You may have noticed two things I didn't mention we consider in holistic review. And it's very important to know. UC San Diego and the entire UC system does not use test scores. We don't use SAT. We don't use ACT. The only exception to that would be if your student is international and wants to show that to show their English proficiency. We make that one of the several ways they can show us that. But other than that, we're not going to use tests. Some of you whose students have done really well, we know you might be frustrated by that, but we also know there's plenty of students out there who feel like their tests don't accurately reflect how capable they are. And we happen to think that's a possibility too. So for several years now, we have made the decision to not use those scores. Your students may very well apply to schools that are instead what they call test optional, which means that they give students a chance to decide whether to turn in scores. And then that university may say they want to consider them and they may see if it helps them or it doesn't. We don't even go there. We just say we're not going to use the tests no matter what. And that's not all that common across the US. What's most common in the US right now, if you look at the few thousand of us that offer bachelor's degrees out there, is to be test optional. And besides us being test free, the other smaller group that's on the other side of test optional is those that have gone back after the pandemic to requiring tests. So keep in mind if your student is applying to those different kinds of places, that'll probably be a little bit of a headache for them. The other thing, though, is that some of you asked us about recommendation letters, and I will emphasize we do not utilize those in our process either. So if your student has been stressing about figuring out which teacher or counselor can write something for them, they don't need to stress about that with us because we don't put it to use. I will say if your student is applying to other schools that do put that to work, it's a great idea for them to get started now before deadlines hit too soon to identify a good person or two who can write those letters. It's okay. Encourage them to just realize it's a perfectly great thing to go up to a teacher and ask them. The only thing that drives counselors that we know up the wall is if you're applying to a school with a November 15th deadline, don't let your student be the one that comes up to a teacher on November 14th to ask for that letter. That's a very bad move. You can assure them that that's not a good move. Transfer students, again, some of this doesn't apply to the students that some of you all are working with. Transfers, it's much more straightforward. It's much more about the major prep, but we still have all these same things required, and we may put them to use from time to time. The PIQs can be a chance for us to learn something we really need to know about the student, but mainly just know, again, it's really more and more swinging over to their ability to get into the major they want. There's so much more about this that comes in more depth from my colleagues in the admissions office that's a part of enrollment management. So again, we've got mainly parents and families here, but check in with your students to make sure they're considering coming to some of the student-focused webinars put on by admissions that gets into this kind of stuff in much more detail. And we know they'll get more guidance out of that I'm trying to offer here today. One other thing I'm just going to offer in the free advice you didn't necessarily ask for, but I just try to tell parents and families this every now and then when I check in with them. We think it's a terrific move that you've showed up to something like today to learn more about how you can inform your student about what's going on. But let me also say, we want to really encourage you to know limits and borderlines and boundaries with your student, because this is really their thing. And sometimes I have a friend that works on the high school counseling side who uses the great metaphor that if this is about being in the driver's seat, your student should be the ones with their hands on the steering wheel right now. You can certainly be in the front seat next to them because no one likes a backseat driver. But on the other hand, we really need to encourage you not to reach over and grab the wheel or make them feel like you're trying to do that. This is really their thing. We may love that you're thinking that some things we're telling you today make you really hope your student will pick UC San Diego, but ultimately it's just that. It's their pick, it's their choice. So we wish you all the best with that as you navigate this time together. And just really know that any number of things that can work out differently for your student. I bet they're going to have a lot of great choices if they play this right. And your job is to just really help them make sure they're understanding and getting a chance to wrap their heads around all of this. We have time for a couple more questions before we wrap up. So I'm just going to look through a few of the other really good ones that came in. Again, a lot of terrific questions that we just can't possibly get to all of them here today. But there's one I just had here on the list I was going to come back to. Give me just a second. Oh, several of you asked questions about things like portfolios or sending samples of your work. If your student is looking at something like art or theater or music, we have a new cinema studies program. Griselda can maybe even put a link to that major in here because I think it's a terrific new program. But one way or another, we do have a few different disciplines as a part of our School of the Arts and Humanities here that are ones where a student will be able to show creative output. And we don't have them do that on the application itself. But whether they're a transfer or a first-year student, if your student is applying to one of those departments, when they apply, we'll give them information on how to submit an optional portfolio, we call it. And so if they're looking at this at other schools, they may already be familiar with the concept, and we use an outside company called Slide Room to do this. But if your student is applying to music and wants to submit a recorded performance tape or theater and a clip about their acting, or visual arts and they want to submit a visual portfolio of things, there are ways to do that. And so to let you know what happens there, students who want to submit one, and you really hear me emphasizing who want to, this is optional, this is not required. They are able to do that, but they need to follow the additional instructions they will get to do that as an additional separate step besides applying to the UC in a general sense. And so when they do that, that's going to get sent to the faculty or maybe the grad assistants over in those departments. They will do a review of the kinds of things they value, and they will report back to us on what they see. And I will say there are definitely cases where a student we're kind of on the fence with in the admissions office. If the portfolio results in a really rave review from the faculty of that department, it can absolutely have a bearing on our admissions decision. No rave review from them is going to completely override what we do in the admissions office, because ultimately we're admitting students who overall show the potential to be fantastic fits here. But just to emphasize, it's a really neat option. There's really no downside, I don't think, to your student doing that. It may take a little bit of their time. But again, if you've got a student who's interested in those kinds of things, they may already be doing this for another school anyway. So submitting the same materials to us, especially if it's another school who uses Slide Room, they may find doesn't take much extra work at all. So we hope that we'll do that. But again, it's definitely an optional thing. Somebody else asked a little bit more about international students and how we're faring with various things around that. I know some of you in the audience today are international families. So one other thing I just want to add on a practical note to start answering that question is that when students apply here, because we are a state institution, we have some priorities and some expectations with our own state to save certain amounts of space in our incoming class each year for California residents. Students who live in this state, they've gone to our high schools or community colleges. That is definitely our top priority. We are the University of California. But we do absolutely love to see students from all 49 other states, from countries all over the world. And we have a very geographically diverse class here every year. So first of all, if you are a family whose student is applying from out of state or abroad, you can know that you're not competing with Californians for the spots we have for them. You're competing with each other for the smaller number of spaces from the smaller number of applicants we have from outside of California. Whether they're international or US citizens living in other states, the information we need to gather will still help us consider things in pretty much the same way, but you're just in a different group of students for consideration. When students arrive here as international students, they can know that we do an incredible amount of work to support that community and make it worthwhile. So families here of international students, I want you to know your student won't be the only person here or anything crazy like that. In fact, we probably have, I think, about 7,500 international students on this campus right now. So it's a wonderful community representing, I don't even know how many countries at any given time, but they're really likely to feel that's great. And hey, families and parents of California students or students around the US, I think this is a really neat thing for you to know as well, because we want your students to be able to really experience, again, different perspectives and different ways of seeing things. It's part of the really great stuff of going to a school like this one. So that's about all we have time for today. A couple of things I just want to come back to before we have Griselda wrap us up and end the webinar. One is just a reminder, we are doing these monthly. So keep an eye, or have your student keep an eye on their email for the next invitation we'll send out in November and maybe December or January, but maybe not both, because you're taking a break and we're trying to as well. We will have at least one or two more before the end of January when those college and major assignments need to be finalized. We'll very likely not only have somebody from the colleges, but I'm hoping we'll have somebody from financial aid, because we know the affordability is a big part that you all want to hear about as we come up. So just know that that kind of stuff is coming. Meanwhile, just know that as much as we'd love to tell you we are a highly ranked school and a highly regarded school, and we are, what's most important to us is we are made who we are by your students taking an interest in us. So we're honored if your students are thinking about coming here, and we hope this is another one of the many things that helps you with that process. We wish you the best, and we'll go ahead and sign off now and wish you a great rest of October, and we'll see you next month. Take care, everybody.